my most prized possession decks, and this is the Alice Tarot, and this deck is by Baba Studios, and this deck is just, oh my god, this is like next level. This is like amazing. The cardstock is amazing. The quality of the art is just, oh my god, and there's this shine to it that is just amazing. The only thing that I'm kind of sad about this deck, which has nothing to do with the deck, is that I did take this to Australia, and I have moved around a lot with it, and the box has gotten a little damaged. The box is lovely, but the corner kind of teared and or tore, and it made me sad. But the deck itself is just amazing. This is my most expensive deck. This deck costs over, like, with shipping, like over $100. And so my mother got it for me as kind of like a birthday gift when I was going to Australia, because I wasn't going to be here for my birthday. And so she got this deck, and she gave it to me the morning I left for Australia, and it was kind of like going down the rabbit hole. I thought that was kind of very pertinent for this situation. But this deck is just absolutely glorious. There is a little white book that comes with the deck, but then there is a companion book that delves into why they chose each picture, why, how it goes along with the Alice in Wonderland book. Now, that is one thing I have heard. I haven't read Alice in Wonderland, but apparently this deck is a lot more based on the book than any of the movies. So if you're really into the book and stuff like that, like a lot of these characters who aren't even like in the movie or the book, oh my god, I love that moon card. Isn't that just amazing? Like, this is not doing it justice. It, like, when you look at these cards, they almost look like they're 3D. They're or like that they're moving. It's amazing. But yeah, so this is more like the book. And so there's characters in here that may not be in the, in the movies that you might recognize, but they're just absolutely amazing. And I did use this as one of my main reading decks in Australia, and so I really got to know this deck, and it's really, it does amazing readings, and I would say it's well worth the money, and I'm so glad it's in my collection. But thank you, Mom, for buying that for me, because yeah, but look at that. Because yes, this is definitely a bit of a pricey deck. I love this. The devil is a Jabberwocky. Beware the Jabberwocky. So good. So yeah, and you can see like even the card, they kind of, it looks like they're coming out of the card. It's really, really amazing. All right, so this next deck, a lot of you probably recognize. This is my current shadow work deck, and this is the Tarot of Vampires. I got this a long time ago. It was one of my first decks, probably in the first 10 decks I bought, first 5 even maybe. I know this is one of Racine's, well, it is Racine's favorite tarot deck, and so I was very drawn to it, and I love vampires. But when I first got it, it definitely was a bit much for me, and I didn't really connect with it. It was a bit dark. But, I held on to it. I always felt like this had a kind of a sacred energy to it. So I obviously held on to it. And it's only been in the last couple months it, like, called out to me. And I am now in the process of being in a total love affair with this deck. I love it. It's actually the deck that first started my channeling of the sacred symbol that I did a painting of. I was actually working with this deck when that came through, and it's just glorious, and I love this deck. Yes, it's like a bit dark, but there is something about it that's amazing. The cardstock leaves a lot to be desired, but that's really the only quote-unquote flaw I see with this. Now, the book that comes with this is called Phantasmagoria, and most tarot readers will tell you it's like the be-all, end-all book, and I have read part of it, and it's amazing. But it is like a legitimate book. Like, you could read it and just, they talk about everything, the symbolism, the zodiac, like everything. I mean, it is just full of information. I do believe Ian Daniels is just produced an oracle deck, and so I would like to get that at some point. I'm not sure if it's vampires or just this kind of style, but I definitely just love this deck. So if you're looking for a deck that is sensual and for shadow work, this is definitely the deck to go for. Let me see if I can find some of my favorite cards. Oh, I love this Ten of Swords. Alright, so my other main reading deck that I've been using recently is the Shadowscape Tarot. So when I'm not using the Bonefire Tarot, this is the deck that I'll reach for. It's a very light deck. I actually find that this and the, like if I could only, if I couldn't bring the Bonefire and I was going to, bring like one that I could use for most readings, I would bring this deck and then like the Tarot Vampires, which I actually have in this box, which fit both in perfectly, which of course, synchronicity. You gotta love it. So this is the Shadowscapes, and my only, and this is, I believe, is done by the same people who did the Tarot Vampires. My only issue with this deck is that the cards are far too small for the art. These paintings are so detailed and they're so tiny that having them be small cards really doesn't do them justice. Like you can kind of see here, there's so much involved, and so that's the thing. Like I don't feel like the size card really does the paintings justice. I would so be okay if this deck was, the size of an Oracle deck, or the Thoth Tarot, but like these are just stunning, and I love the energy. It's a very watery energy. It's a very ethereal energy, very mermaidy, very like fae and mermaid. It's just absolutely stunning. But see, yeah, you have to like zoom way in to really see these cards, but they are absolutely glorious, and I love them. So I would definitely recommend this deck. It's a very gentle deck, but it's a very clear deck, and so I think it's a really good one to start with. This one also comes with a really big book, which I haven't done a lot with, but yeah, I actually don't feel like I need the book for this one. A lot of the ones, I'll look at the books and kind of explore them, but this one I just felt really gave clear messages. I really didn't need much of a book. I read this deck more so than a lot of other ones extremely intuitively, and yeah, it's just, I'm having quite the love affair with this deck as well recently. So I would say my main reading decks right now are the Bonefire, the Shadowscapes, and the Tarot Vampires, probably very closely by the Marielle Tarot. So yeah, it's really, really lovely. And speaking of the Marielle Tarot, here's the Marielle Tarot. Now this deck is powerful. I would say this deck is the one that I hold as the most magically sacred. I don't know if that makes sense. The cardstock is amazing. This deck is the deck I use when I want to step into my shaman side and really delve into my deepest soul messages. This deck is not Rider-Waite based. It's actually very unique to itself. I will read the book, which is amazing. The book is amazing that goes with this, but this deck I read very intuitively as well. These pictures just sing to my soul. And yeah, wow. When I first saw this deck in reviews, I just did not connect with it at all. And then in Australia, I started just feeling like this deck was going to come into my space. And then when I got back from Australia, it was like the second day I was back, and I found it in the shop for like half the price that it was in Australia, and I was like, I'm getting it. I need it. And it was instant love. Like this deck, as soon as it actually was in my hands and ready for me to work with it, I was enamored deeply with it. But yeah, this is just one of my all-time favorite decks. I don't think I'll ever not have this one unless it's, you know, not my choice. Alright, so this deck is called the Enchanted Tarot, and I got this deck while I was in Australia for like $30, and then I was trying to buy it for my friend, and I couldn't find it for less than $100. So I'm not sure if this is out of print, and I just happened to get a really, really good deal, or what, but this deck is really hard to get. Well, at least when I tried to find it again. This deck is very interesting. When I got it, I was not super happy with it. The pictures aren't like perfectly like printed. The cardstock is amazing though. And I remember looking at the pictures and being like, okay, like it's actually all done. It's like material and stitching. Let me see if you can. Yeah, it's a really unique deck. And it comes with an amazing book. And it actually has a lot to do with like how to take the energy of the cards and bring it into a healing space. And, but when I did my first spread with it, I was amazed at how beautiful and gentle, I do love this card, this deck was. This actually became my main reading deck in Australia as well. It was the first one I really had as like I was always bringing different decks to the shop when I first started working there, but this was the first one I really like consistently brought, over and over again. It was like my main reading deck for a couple months. And it's not so much the art that does it for me. It was somehow the way the cards would lay out, the way the deck spoke to me. The messages just made sense. And the difference on this is instead of cups, it's hearts, which I thought was kind of interesting. So it's a little more like the traditional deck, you know, game playing deck. But yeah, I really like this deck. I don't use it a lot so much now, but I find it's a unique deck, and I'm really glad that it's in my collection. So I love this death card. It's really lovely. Alright, so this next deck is called the Syrian Starseed Tarot, and this deck is massive. Like, we're talking like Oracle card, if not bigger size, and it's just massive. And this deck I found at the shop where I worked in Australia, and oh god, yeah, it's actually really hard to hold. The art isn't my, and actually it's more like photorealism. The art isn't my favorite, but I do like the overall style of this like starseed kind of cosmic thing that it has going on, and so I really do enjoy this deck. I used it a lot more in Australia than I do now. But yeah, I love this. Like, look, it's got the crystals and stuff. It does come with a little book, not a white book. It's actually like a legitimate book. Wow, this deck is actually really heavy. It does have a book that goes along with it, and it is, I think, pretty thorough for being, you know, a book on the smaller side. But I just really love this deck. If you don't like photorealism, I still think this deck is pretty good. It's actually more photo than, you know, like photo, like manipulation. Like, I don't feel like it's that intense, so it actually kind of works. But yeah, I actually really enjoy this deck, more than I thought I would. I do like the messages from it, but more so, like I said, I really like the starseed feel to it. It's very cosmic, you might say. cardstock for this is like really intense. I really like that one. Transition. Not just yummy. I really like that one. It's Ascension. Karma. Okay. Ooh, I like that one. Egyptian and Buddha. Can't go wrong there. Alright, and the next deck I have here is the Thoth Tarot. It's the bigger version. As you guys know, there is a white book that does come with this, but then there's like several like guidebooks, huge guidebooks that go along with this, because the Thoth Tarot is like a whole other thing. This is not Rider-Waite. This is actually its own complete different tarot system, very esoteric. This deck I will pull a card from and study it. I don't usually do spreads with this. I still feel like I'm not ready to work with this deck. Like, I love it. It has a very magical energy, but I don't know. I think because it has such different meanings and I really want to do it justice, I don't feel like I'm really at a space to really do readings with it. However, I will pull a card and look through the huge guidebook and really delve into it when I feel like that's necessary. But yeah, this is just a whole other kind of deck. So yeah, the Thoth Tarot is something else. But it's really beautiful and I love it. Alright, and this next deck has a very special place in my heart. This is the Druidcraft Tarot, and this is the tarot deck that I first fully learned the tarot on. I was a deck collector before I got into tarot, so when I started getting into tarot, before I even knew the system, you know, I was reading the card books and I was, you know, delving into it, but I definitely bought a lot of decks before I could fully, you know, do a spread and just, you know, read the tarot. So it wasn't until a little later that I really, you know, I'd learned the cards enough where I could do a spread on my own. And this is the deck that I basically studied on. This is when I first got to Australia. And I just essentially flashcards like this deck, and I like over and over and over again, and I'd go over each meaning in my mind, and I journaled and all stuff. So this was the first deck that, like, these cards are what, you know, will flash in my mind a lot of times when I can't remember what a card means. That doesn't really happen anymore, but like at first, like when I would use another deck, this is the picture. I was like, oh yeah, that's what it means. There's something about these images that just really made like what they meant really clear and simple to me. So this has a very special place in my heart. I would definitely say if you're looking for a beginner deck, this deck is amazing. You know, if you're not going to go for a Rider-Waite or something like this, I just think the meanings of these cards are just so clear and simple, and they're just easy to remember. So this deck just was really a special deck for me, and I would highly recommend it. It comes with a great little book. It's bigger than a white book, and it has it set up so you can see, like, you know, you can look at all the 10s, all the 4s, and so you can really compare and contrast like all the meanings and stuff. And it just, I don't know, this is just a lovely deck, and I highly recommend it for beginners for sure. Now this deck is a very unique deck. This is called the Oracle Tarot, and this is by Lucy Cavendish. And this deck is a little different, and so I know a lot of like traditional tarot people may not like this deck, but I love this deck. This deck is my manifesting deck. If I want to bring certain energies in and I really want to just like watch myself manifest, this is the deck I'll use. I love the fact that there's keywords here. It's beautiful, and the real serious difference of this deck is there are no court cards. So even though like it's not the full deck, if there is a beginner who who's wanting to learn tarot and, wants an, kind of an easier way to learn the cards with the keywords and with there being no court cards. I think this is a really great deck to start on because I know a lot of people have trouble with the court cards, so it might be something you want to delve into maybe a little later on if you're not really feeling those and you really just want to get into the major and the minor arcana. This deck is ridiculously gentle, but also very clear. But all of the quote-unquote negative cards have been reimagined into like a positive, like a more of a positive, like for instance, like the Five of Swords, it's challenges and problems, but it's like, it's not necessarily like so intense. Or the Three of Swords, unexpected revelation, like it's not like, oh, you're being stabbed, and I do love the art. I love, or like, yeah, the Four of Coins is, steady process, things like that. So it's just kind of like a different take on it. And I love the abstract art. It's lovely. So yes, this deck has a special place in my heart, and I love the colors. And the cardstock is pretty good too. And last but certainly not least, I have the Rider-Waite Smith deck. Now, I believe this is one of the more recent additions, but I'm not 100% sure. This is the box. But the colors in this are much more muted and warm. And I'll have to say, the Rider-Waite Smith never really drew me in until later on in learning the tarot. And I think it's because I just really didn't connect to the art, and the images were too bright. And so when I saw this one, I really liked the more muted colors, like this. And so I actually really like this. Of course, the cardstock is lovely, it's beautiful, it's the Rider-Waite, it's great. I do actually use this one a lot more frequently, and now that I know the card meanings, I can really appreciate the art now, and I do really like it. I am definitely much more of like an abstract, artsy type of tarot deck collector, so like more of the traditional ones I'm not as drawn to, but this one I definitely liked. I like the muted colors in these. Like I like the greens being, this like kind of, not minty, but I don't know, it just feels different to me. So I really like this deck. But I don't need to show you guys this deck because it's, well, it's the most well-known tarot deck. But yeah. Anyway, so that is my tarot collection. I will be following this up with my Oracle deck collection, which I have just as many, if not more, Oracle decks than I do tarot decks, because I actually started collecting them before I started doing tarot. So if you like these videos, please give it a like and hit subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and there will definitely be more videos because there's going to be all my Oracle cards. So please be sure to hit subscribe if you want to continue seeing these videos. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions about the decks, please feel free to ask, or if you'd like me to do a review of any new decks that you're not seeing here, please let me know. I'm always getting new decks, and I'd love to do unboxings and things like that. So I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Many blessings. Namaste. And don't forget, it's all about the soul journey, and stay tuned for the Oracle deck collection. All right.